the adopted budget. However, I just want to remind you, the adopted budget this past year had that $900,000 appropriation for economic development. So what I want to stress to you is really we have shifted more from capital items more toward and placed that funding more toward recurring expenses, which is not necessarily a good thing, but that's just the reality of it. So I don't want you to be misled by that decrease, because it's a minimal decrease to begin with, but in reality, more funding is devoted toward recurring expenses. Again, the budget maintains a tax rate of 82 cents and it appropriates available fund balance for capital items, not for recurring.
I didn't know it was 82. I was Googling and it was still 70 something.
Really?
Yeah.
Was that a current, wonder where that was coming from, where that was pulling from?
I don't know. Because they were talking about meeting, I tried to find
It must have been an old, it had
So
something
this is,
else.
because this, how long's it been 82?
Yes, since 15,
Really? Okay.
the summer of 15,
All right. Thank you.
which was for the 16th fiscal year. The projected tax base is $2,864,839,538. And this is the good, of anything positive I have to speak to about this budget, it is the fact that we are very, very fortunate to have an increase in our property tax base. That increase is on top of, you'll recall, we had what I consider to be relatively, relatively speaking, a sizable increase this year. Now, as you all know, Smithfield, there's a, if you want to sit there or wherever you want to sit. You all know that Smithfield has done a major expansion project, and largely, and this is really a, you don't want to have all your eggs in one basket. But truth be told, the vast majority of the increase in the tax base this year is directly attributable to Smithfield's expansion project, or their new development with the cold storage. So I just want to remind you, a 3.1% increase. We are very fortunate. We've had years that we actually have decreases in our property tax base, because, as you all know, when you have industry that has business personal property that depreciates, it takes a lot of residential type construction to offset sizable decreases or depreciation in business personal property. So we have had years that we've had decreases in the property tax base. Thankfully, we've had 2 consecutive years of increases.
What's that 25%? If you know that 75, what's those 25 coming from?
Just more from general, just other. I don't have any one thing in
There was a
particular.
few new solar farms.
Yeah,
this
solar
year.
farms.
And there was some new construction.
But now solar farms, they're only 20%. Just to remind you, that only 20% of the value is taxable. The tax collection rate is projected at 95.5%, and 1 penny is projected to generate approximately $275,496. We're showing, I wanted for you to kind of pay close attention to this chart. And Mr. Cogby, I'm kind of speaking to you, your question or the concern that you raised at the last meeting in terms of trying to be conservative, somewhat conservative with regard to our tax base projections and that type of thing. So what we have tried to show here is that the tax value, the property tax value that is in our system now that has been picked up through business personal property that was, you remember they have until April 15th to share that information, so that's all been picked up now. The value for real property is $1,980,000,000. For personal property is $549,876,925. Motor vehicles is $275 million, and public utilities is $153 million. What we have done is estimated 96.5% of the real and the business personal. That gives you these figures. We multiply that times the tax rate. That gives us these figures times the 95.5% collection rate, which it looks like we're on track to be slightly higher than that this year. And then this gives us our revenue picture. So we're leaving 3.5. You can kind of see the difference in terms of what we're leaving in revenue, not in the picture, so I hope that that will be, I hope that will be sufficient in terms of, giving us a little cushion. But I just wanted to be very transparent and forthright and kind of help you understand exactly where that's
Do we
coming from.
normally pick up 100% of that, or what's the rate?
No, that's about kind of what we do.
Reach about 96.5.
Yes, sir. A lot of times we haven't, I don't know that we've necessarily talked about all this in the past. A lot of times I think we just kind of show our projected tax base figures. But I wanted you to be real, I want to be very clear with you, especially when you brought that point up the other day. It made me think we ought to show that.
Okay.
One thing I will say, the 98% on motor vehicles, that's really, if you think about it, we don't know what the values will be until the people list their cars or go pay their, renew their tags or whatever. And so really, the figure that we have is 100% of what's listed. Other than things that they pick up, this personal property, if people don't have their tags on a vehicle or whatever, so,
When Renee, we was talking with Renee about that personal property point of it, and about locating personal property, did they go out and do a research on that to find anything of personal property that was still out there?
if I'm not mistaken, the state's trying to come up with some type of system that gets, well, I forgot what that's called, it's not gap filling, but there's something they're trying to come up with that helps to identify those vehicles.
Okay.
And we just had that girl part-time that went through to find out all those mobile homes and stuff that were no longer listed.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So did
That's a statewide issue though, you've heard, I know you've heard through the association the concern about, well, if somebody doesn't renew their tag, then there's really no, it's hard for the county to have that as a, value to bill.
Now, reading out that, I know one gentleman told me he had a bunch of motor vehicles parked on his car place where he serviced cars, and the state came out and got at him about that was personal property because they was his sitting out there.
Right.
So we don't do that
is the
type of
gap
thing?
billing.
Is
That
it
is
called
the
gap
gap
billing?
billing.
Okay, I thought the word was gap billing, I couldn't remember 100%.
Okay, I was just wanting to know, 'cause he was asking me about that they came out and assessed him a bunch of money on a bunch of vehicles he had like out in storage, but they was literally his because he had put billing on where they changed the titles because they did work on them and stuff like that.
Right. And in that case, the county is supposed, if I'm not mistaken, the county's supposed to bill the property owner directly. And they call that gap billing, and there's been a big focus among the tax assessors and throughout the state and the Department of Revenue to try to develop a system that catches those vehicles.
Well, do we have staff to do that? That's what I'm asking.
Well, we have,
VTS has been helping with that too, and so far we haven't had anything that I'm aware of.
yeah.
Okay.
Sales tax accounts for approximately 13.84% of general fund revenue. Some of you may recall that it hasn't been many years at all, that it was 15 and 16% of our general fund revenue. So that shows, and we'll show a pie chart in a minute, that shows that a greater emphasis is on property tax now rather than sales tax and other sources of revenue. Article 44 is anticipated to generate approximately $855,000. $1,615,620 in sales tax revenue is earmarked for debt service and capital expenditures for Blaine County Schools. Yeah, well, we have somebody that's going to speak in a little bit more detail, but I do want to remind you that the $1,615,000 for sales tax comes from Article 42 and a good portion of Article 40. And also, all of Article 44 is dedicated to the public schools and the Blaine Community College, and we'll show the breakdown of that.
So when it first came in, it was 700 something, so I mean, it's going up?
It's going up slightly, yes, sir. And I'll show you exactly when that's, it's hard, I want to make a very important point about that when we get there. This pie chart shows our revenues by source, and again, you can see that beyond half is dedicated, is derived from property taxes.
So Greg, if I ain't mistaken, state had a source of money come in they weren't expected in April. Does that change anything for us?
Not that I know of.
I mean, like 700,
700 million?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
so that didn't change our projection for taxes or nothing?
No, sir.
I thought that's what it was for taxes and stuff.
Well, largely that's related to income taxes for the state.
Okay.
What happened? Did we get any benefits from the money that they did with the Medicaid thing when they went through and found all that money with Medicaid? How they allocating that money? Did the state give us any of that money?
I haven't heard of us receiving any money for that.
Like Medicaid, they went in and said the savings on Medicaid when they been going to all the MCOs
Right.
and asking them to give that money back.
Right.
What's happening with that money?
I haven't, that's more state money, that's not, that never originated with the county, so I don't know that we.
But it's coming from the MCOs, and we were part of one of the MCOs, that's what I'm saying, like, I was, at the meeting, they said they're having to send money back.
But just to put in perspective, the MCO's, but like East Point, for instance, and you know this better than I do, but their budget's $300+ billion per year.
About 3 and 4.
The county contribution's $48,000, so it's, I mean, it's not even a penny on the dollar to speak, so to speak. The fund balance appropriation is included in the budget, again, for capital needs, totals $753,144. The amount appropriated from the health department, and that is earmarked only for health-related expenditures, because that money was generated from health department services. It can only be, this is considered reserve money that can only be spent on health department services. That's $105,000. And then facilities fees, budgeted is $31,500. That's the money that comes in from court cases, and it can be spent on the courthouse, primarily courthouse facility-related needs. These are the positions that were requested in the budget. I know we reviewed those with you last time, and I don't want to spend too much time on them unless there's any questions, but again, none of those.
That top one up there, the election,
Oh, that's good, thank you.
that election director, assistant deputy director. Is that to fill the current vacancy because of Cynthia? That's additional employee they want?
Yes, sir, my
So it
understanding.
can go from 3 to 4, that's what they want
That's
to
my
do?
understanding.
Plus a half-time person?
That's my understanding, yes, sir.
Is that what you're proposing?
No, none of those are, no, those are all the requests, none
Oh.
of those are. I do want to point out a new one that just came to us, late last week, if I'm not mistaken. Animal control, you'll see down the fifth line. Apparently the Animal Control Board had a meeting recently, and they are requesting 2 part-time shelter attendants or 1 full-time employee.
Greg, didn't they make that request last year?
Well, it was year before last, if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken, and we added
Okay, we
it.
added it.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Right.
cause I thought that we'd already done this.
We did. Historically, and many of you remember, we had two guys, Larry Martin and Ted Carter, for decades at the animal shelter. And then, over time, it's increased. And you all know how the nature of that service is changing. But, and the professionalism has increased tremendously, so don't get me wrong, that's a positive thing.
Sure.
But it has gone from historically from 2 people to what, 4 and a half? 4.5. positions.
Greg, out of those positions, there's any of them essential that we must have, that you look as a priority? What's priority on that list then? If it had to go to a priority thing?
That's a good question. It depends on the perspective. If you talk, it depends on, I don't have any of them that I feel like are absolute mandatory positions, and that's why I don't have funding included for them.
The 20,000, is that a full, or is that?
That would be 2 part-times or,
So
and
2
the one-
part-times would be 40, or that's the total for 2?
no, it'd be about 10,000, because a part-time person can only
Full-time
work.
would be 20,000?
It would be more than that by the time you added benefits and all that
Yeah.
stuff, yeah.
But what I'm asking, that 455,000, you said you're not recommending that we do any of that, it'd just be left at our discretion if we wanna add one, is that what you're saying?
If you want to, the funding for it's hard to come by. That's the challenge with that. That's why I don't have any of the positions funded. Again, a strong case, I mean, let me answer it this way, Mr. Cottonville. A strong case could be made for any of those positions.
I understand
You've
that.
all heard from Vicki Smith at DSS about their need for a human services evaluator 1 position. What you haven't heard her make a strong case for, I don't think at this point, is for a deputy. They'd like to have a deputy out at DSS on a regular basis. And she makes a strong case for that as well. I mean, so people will make strong cases for each of those positions. And you may very well hear those cases being made to you directly.
But right now, you feel that none of them from your.
Because of here's the thing, because the needs, as we all know, the needs outweigh the resources. So we have to make choices, and because benefits are going up, required benefits are going up so much this year, and we know into the next year or two, related to retirement system benefits, health insurance, that type of thing, that we need to ensure that we have funding to provide for our existing employees. And so we're trying to maintain with the staffing level that we have. In addition to that, we're trying to find efficiencies everywhere that we can, as I mentioned to you the last time. And particularly through attrition, where we have vacancies, the budget director, or budget position, finance position at DSS, we're consolidating with the personnel position. So we're trying to find efficiencies as they become available.
Is animal control, is that shelter attendants, why the prisoners not working out, or what's the?
No, that's in the, we also have, that's right, that's a good point, we also have inmates there.
Why don't we
But I'll
increase the
tell you-
prisoners?
Exactly.
I'll tell you what, I haven't really talked to anybody in Terry, I don't know if you've talked to anybody yet, but if you want to speak to it, go right ahead.
It speaks to a change in policy recommended by the veterinarian on staff. She recommends that a animal that comes in with a score of 3 or less is to be seen by a veterinarian rather than just, rather than the tech. And so that requires a person to actually take the animals to the veterinarian. And it takes somewhere between an hour to 3 or 4. So currently they are keeping a log. We have put into place this policy since she recommended it, opens them up for liability.
So who pays for that extra veterinarian cost?
It comes out of the animal control.
So why would you do a policy like that? It's gonna cost you money and plus more employees.
We did a draft policy for 90 days, I'm sorry, because we called other agencies. Sampson County is currently in a litigious process based on having an animal that wasn't seen. And we did contact the state consultant as well, and she said it was a good idea. She was not aware of one, but that it was a good idea. So we did a draft for 90 days until we could get more information on it.
So what's the cost gonna be?
We don't know. They're anticipating roughly 20 to 25 animals a year. But they could not give, at the animal control meeting, they could not give data. And that was part of the reason we did it. We did a 90-day draft.
So what you're saying, to make sure I understand, when I go to the vet with my dog, I see them come up from the health department with dogs to carry them to the vet. That's the individual you're talking about, hiring a person to do that specific task?
That there would be somebody that would be able to do that as well as help in the animal control department.
The transportation is an issue, obviously. Getting an inmate obviously does not have
The
Yeah,
inmates
'cause I see the
can't
lady
help.
over there, it takes a long time, because they were sitting over with me for about a couple hours.
How are you doing it now?
Do we not have a vet that could come to us?
The girl goes over there, and bring
Well, like
over
you could
there.
have like on a weekly, I don't know how much is needed, but have like a traveling vet, so instead of, that just seems to me like you're wasting a lot of time and having somebody go and sit in a, Lord have mercy, I take Paisley and Oakley are there and you sit there for an hour and a half and I'm,
Yes.
that's a strain for me. But for someone to do that on a regular basis, I feel like we should probably look into other resources and having somebody come to us. Yeah, contract when needed.
I
And
know
I
they
mean, I
have
know
to sit
it may
there,
be a
'cause I
lot
was
more
over there, and
expensive,
they
but
came
used to have
what you
that
can
come.
have,
Yeah, they have to
and
sit
getting
there.
somebody
The one that
sit
passed
there,
away.
their time, gas, and
Midget.
all that.
Yeah, I think he came in and visited.
See if anyone else does that. Your area doesn't.
Well, I was thinking that was a full-time person that worked over there, that brought the dogs over, but she came there, she sit there with me for about 2 hours.
It could be a full or one of their part-time people.
If it was a female, it might have been,
It was a lady,
yeah.
it was a young lady, she came in and
Full-time
dog.
and we have a full and part-time.
I knew it was full-time.
She was over there when I was over there, my
I
dog.
mean, if they're gonna create a policy that's gonna create more need for people, then you got to do the demand. I mean, you can't just wait and create a policy if you can't fulfill it, so I guess what I'm trying
It
to
just
say.
came up Friday, I mean, this just came up.
I know, but I
Friday.
mean, that's what we need to talk about
And we
that.
will, that's exactly.
What kind of violation will you be if you don't do it? That's what I'm asking.
Well, it's not saying that we won't do it, it may just put a strain, say for instance, the positions weren't funded, then you just wouldn't add the extra positions, and just put that much more of a, they just wouldn't be able to spend, if they're at the vet, they wouldn't be able to be doing something else. So they'd still, I mean, we'd still take dogs to the vet if we needed to, just like we're already doing.
Do they
Right.
have a separate section?
We just wouldn't have extra
for
people.
animals
Well, I
to
go
work
back-
with?
No.
So, I don't know what it means, are they like this?
They're skinny, they're skinny, and part of the, problem would come in particularly during hunting season, because the hunters like to run their animals lean.
Sure.
So they would come in, you know, if they're picked up and they're bought in, that's,
I agree with Mr. Peterson though. I mean, if you have to rejuggle, then my first thought process would be bring more of the inmates in, free up that full-time individual that we already have. They make those runs. If we have to have 2 or 3 more inmates to stay there and do the work and keep one of our full-time people that can make the transition. I think there's ways around that to make sure that we got the staffing to do the cleaning and doing or whatever, but let the full-time person do the running. In other words, free them up, so we gotta look at it different. We got to have you now just running and doing whatever you got to do. And the sad thing is you're probably paying to fix animals, which is required, that they may end up being euthanized. I mean, that's part of
we
being.
even talked about having a 2 observation rather than just the person bringing the animal in, scoring it, that we have 2 people observe it. You know, we're trying to look at what best practice is and how to do, and right now, we just did not have those answers, so.
Yeah.
I want to share with you too, that you remember we recently had the accreditation at the health department. Mr. Peterson and I had an interview with 2 of the members of the team. And one was a director in another county and the other person was a chairman of a HHS board in her county. They were so complimentary. They had been to the animal shelter earlier that day to interview that as part of the accreditation review. They were so complimentary of the animal shelter, how they said it was the cleanest one they had seen. And they were very, very impressed with the staff and that type of thing. So we're fortunate to have a professionally operated facility there.
And I guess that's the reason I say what I say, we need, this might be something we need to work through.
Yeah, that's good.
Can I ask how many, inmates are there working in there?
On a regular basis too.
Shoot, I'm over.
They do the cleaning and that type of thing. Well, I want to mention, I want to go back to, if I could, up to the second item there, the tax administration, personal property specialist. Renee has been working looking at her operation. She has decided that it would be best for her to pull money from the appraiser, the contract services part-time, it's not part-time, it's a contract position. For appraisal, we're not spending all the money that's budgeted to use for additional part-time hours to do some of this work. So really, she has a plan in place to operate the best that
How much
she
money is
can
allocated
with the
for that?
funding that she already has.
How much money is allocated for that appraisal, to do that appraisal work is? How much do we allocate?
20,000. You remember that, that's another example of an efficiency. Remember that used to be a full-time
Yeah.
position? So,
And she's actually going to use that more towards the collection side instead of the personal that Carol comes on.
Craig, all this is heartburn, to be honest with you, but with us having to cover Tar Heel and potentially having to cover Listertown EMS, you really better look at that paramedic.
yeah.
Like that, down at the bottom down there?
Because Listertown's not making their calls, they might be going under and Tar Heel's gone under. Or just volunteer rescue squads, and we're gonna have to have some paramedics.
Saying they're building a new building for them right now.
And
They
they
go
go
under.
under.
They got to make a lot of sense.
I mean, that paramedics for real. I need more.
How many do we have now, paramedics? Because I thought, every time you see there's a
We have 40,
vacancy.
we have 40, is it
You got 40
full-time?
total staff. One's me, one's an administrative assistant, one's a training officer. And then the rest is basic supervisors and advanced EMTs.
How many are paramedics?
Right off the top of my head, I'd say at least maybe 15 or 16. Just off the top of my head.
But we're having to pick up Tar Heel and potentially Listertown.
But see, yeah.
We have to add that coverage area that we ain't never had before.
Down to a little town that comes on that on?
They're about to go under.
You remember one time we
So
talked
we'll
about,
have to-
During the daytime,
what was the thing, I remember one time we talked about,
walk me during it, I'm sorry.
Well, I'll just give you a picture of what's happening right now. One of our strongest EMS services as far as volunteer that we've had for years, here in the last month, in fact, this past weekend, the county had to pick up 24 hours of their coverage, Saturday night and all day Sunday, which is a paramedic level squad,
Where's this?
Bladenboro. So I had to put a unit over there, which is not planned for, you know what I'm saying? So that's having to pull coverage from over here to try to cover over there too. So that happened this past weekend.
I remember at one time we was having a conversation with the EMTs that they had, when it came to the billing piece of it, the amount of time they had to spend doing the billing piece of it, is that affecting how the guys flow through, or do they have time to do it? Or is that causing any lag in the performance of those guys going out?
Don't they contract the services? The
What,
billing
what, I guess I'm trying to get to understand what's being asked here.
Yeah, you remember one
Is it
time,
billing or?
you were saying something about you may have to make sure they took time to do the paperwork, to do the billing.
Yeah, that's the most key.
And I'm trying to
They've got
figure,
get
is that
charged.
taking, is that taking too much of the time from the guys, where some of them can't make a run, or does that affect anything?
No, I mean, they're doing it on the go.
They're doing it on the
They're
go.
doing it on the go. We've put measures in place to where they actually can physically do it riding down the road.
Okay. I remember
One's
one time-
driving and one's on a
Yeah, I remember one time
laptop
that
or
was,
either an
that was an
iPad
issue
doing a
one
chart.
time. That was an
Through
issue.
hotspot, you got hotspots
Right.
or whatever.
Yeah.
That's why we asked for the increase in cell phone
That's right.
village for that purpose.
You
Okay.
have 20 paramedics, including your 4 supervisors.
Right.
So 16 on the field. That's a good point, Mr. Scotty. Remember, they used to not be able to
Yeah, one
input the
time that was
data
a problem,
until they
is-
came back to the squad, to
Yeah.
the base there.
And they had to do it. I remember that's when we was hiring some additional, because that was a problem, we was having to get the paperwork to them. And it was losing
So
on the
now they do
bill.
it in the trucks.
Okay.
But that will affect your reimbursement, though, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Part of it.
Yeah, the quicker you get it in, the quicker you get paid, but.
Right.
But EMS, just to remind you too, EMS management consultants does the billing for Bladen County and for the volunteer squads as well, so that service is contracted.
And I,
But Mike,
a personal witness, I think it was last week, and I can appreciate the county overseeing and helping Elizabethtown. I was appalled and very disappointed. I saw a senior citizen, actually a little child, brought it to my attention in my store. A lady fell over at Wells Fargo Bank. I can't even tell you how long it took for somebody to get there to help this woman. I mean, it was embarrassing. Because I stood right in my store, at the store window and watched. And it seemed like forever.
And that's the thing that's hard to plan for. Like this morning, there was a wreck that tied 3 ambulances up at one time. Yeah, right down
It
here.
was serious, it looked serious.
Yeah, and they flew one out.
Yeah.
So when you tie, I mean, that's what we're facing.
Yeah,
We got a large geographical area to cover too, so.
And you can't staff for everything.
but the thing I was looking at, I was trying to say, maybe it doesn't make sense. With all the volunteers, I heard them say something about they make a few dollars every time they run a call. When they go run a call, if you increase that, would that entice any of them to want to run calls? If we increase that part of it, when they run a call, we give them a little bit more?
Can't give them so much, Caldwell.
Well, it'd be cheaper than,
That's Bladenboro
it'd
that
be
pays
cheaper
by the
than
call.
paying.
Bladenboro pays by the
The
call.
other ones pay an hourly rate.
Here, like Bladenboro Rescue, for example, they just upped their call volume pay for these guys, and it has not changed their scheduling at all. Has not helped at all.
Okay, that's what I was trying to figure out, if you gave them
'Cause
more.
here's the issue. You get a lot of those folks that are EMS providers that work normal shift work, plus they got family things going on. They're gonna go, you know, they just don't have time.
Okay. Now, I thought maybe it was something, if it gave them a little bit more money, like if we talking about putting in $54,000 for a paramedic, if you took $54,000 and allocated to give these guys additional
You
funding, would
don't
that
have the
be good?
volunteers in Tar Heel and potential this time.
So we only have people,
You've got to have people, the county's got to cover, that's what I'm telling you. They're gonna have to pick up that
But-
area.
Your thought though is.
I'm just trying to figure out if you
Yeah,
pay him some more
we-
money,
It's a
would
good
if
one,
he
and
was
that's
to
the
work.
thought. That's why you remember several years ago when we began making that allocation to each of the squads,
Yeah.
that was the intent, I mean, if you all remember, that was the intent.
And myself and Mr. Martin had talked about that. What if we tried this?
Right,
You
it's
know?
cheaper to allocate your resources
To
in.
those guys
direction
than
and
to
hire
hire
people.
As somebody.
As of
But it's
today,
not.
it's too late.
Yeah. it's
Exactly,
not.
yeah.
Tar Heel,
Well, I'm talking
Tar
about-
Heel saying it has no bearing on Tar Heel has folded.
But I'm saying like
And it ain't
Elizabethtown,
gonna have no impact on it.
like you say, Elizabethtown getting ready to drop off. If some of the others get ready to drop off, it might be if you gave a little bit more, it might stay a little bit longer. If you shifted that much money to the guys and use in their area, they may run some of the calls if you gave a little bit more money.
They're giving, I know the crash truck to the fire department.
Yes, fire department.
And, they have an attorney, they're trying to determine how their charter reads, what they can do.
Will this kind of affect, coverage for the rest of the county, longer times now for pickup?
Yeah, if you don't have the paramedics, don't have the coverage, yeah.
Depending on the call volume and the timing of the calls. it
But what
potentially
this
could-
Elizabethtown,
Because
gonna
that
build all
vehicle
this
will
big
get that.
house
The
spots
county
on there
have
for,
that.
and what they gonna pay the fire department, that's all the
I know the
money?
fire department is getting, the trash, will receive the crash truck.
Ain't gonna be
I'm not
no
sure
fire
about
department in there?
They told us at the EMS advisory meeting last week that they were talking with their attorney about how their charter reads, how they can.
Get dispersed.
Well, Greg and Bradley and David talk about this too. One thing that the fire departments are doing, a lot of fire departments going to first responders too.
And Tar Heel is, we understand, you
Yeah.
recall that Tar Heel is
So that'll help us a little
adding
bit.
paid staff. They're requesting
As
a
a
tax,
first
Right.
they're requesting a tax rate increase this year.
Mhm.
Mr. Eddie Knight came
Right,
forward
right.
this. And, they're gonna begin the, as Mr. Peterson said, the first responder program. So hopefully that will provide
Something.
folks to be able to respond more quickly.
But your fire departments, aren't they, Charles, running into the same problem with volunteers yet?
Yes. That's why they're going to.
Well, that's the reason Tar Heels asked for tax increase so they can just pay somebody to be there all the time.
Hammond already pays people.
Yeah.
So.
All right.
And they're not, that's why they're doing so well, because they can't get people to come.
Yeah.
Really.
They might have covers 2 days a week now,
Gracious.
even though they're paying.
I don't know, maybe look at some of these nurses who are retiring, maybe they would be interested in doing part-time, so many hours contract.
They have to, they can't just get on the back and
No.
ride.
No,
They-
these are first responders. Because we don't have first responders in our area.
It can't work that way
They
through
can't
state
at all?
law.
Huh?
Oh, for first responders,
Yeah,
they have to actually go to a first responder class.
yeah, but they can still.
Yeah, they could do that, but they couldn't get on the EMS unit
No, I don't
without
want that, I
going-
mean just
yeah.
first responders, that's all, with the fire department.
As you can see here, this is one of the big, costing, one of the big requirements for additional funding in the budget. Employee compensation and benefits, the automatic steps cost approximately $75,000. And again, just to remind you that time frame has been expanded to approximately 4 years is when employees receive a step increase. The state health plan, we don't know the exact figure on this is a projection of 5%. That would be effective January 1st, so it's really a 2.5% increase in terms of the increase in the budget for this year. That's just over 100,000. The retirement contribution we know is increasing from 7.82% to 9.01% for general employees, and then from 8.5 to 9.7 for law enforcement officers. That's 186,000. We also know that from what we understand, the next 2 years there will be additional increases. And then the retiree health insurance is a projection of 5% increase. Hopefully that may not cost that much, but it very well could.
So that's an additional $433,000 we got to come up with this year.
Yes. And if you notice, that's a similar amount to the amount of the total
That's what we,
number of positions that were
yeah,
requested.
that's $1 million.
As far as capital items, I won't go into this any further than just mention to you a couple of, and other than that, we'd be glad to answer questions. I know we looked at this in close detail already. But I do want to mention to you that as far as patrol cars, we were talking about 6 a couple of weeks ago. We have bumped that up to 8. And as far as for EMS, we have added a remount ambulance, and that's 103,000. Is that the only thing, or all those things?
Everything in red.
Everything in red, okay.
Okay, Greg, on that, on the sheriff vehicles, Are we gonna fix that at 8, or are we gonna have that where it's a floating thing from now? For one time it was 10,
We
then
tried
we
to
did
do
5,
10,
so
but,
what we gonna look
and
at?
I know Jeff's here, he can speak to it, but, hasn't it been late, what was the deal with that, Lisa? Wasn't it
It
kinda
was,
late?
a couple of months ago, the sheriff said two of them hadn't come in yet or something. Is
Yeah,
that right?
we've had to delay the vehicles be bought or ordered, we're just waiting to get
Yeah,
out.
so I mean, they've just gotten the ones that,
The ones that we did last year, some of them still coming in,
right.
so we gonna go back to 8.
Well, we're 8 this year, I mean, hopefully, you remember a couple of years ago, we did 6 one year.
Then we did 15 one time.
We did 14.
14.
That's right. But anyway, 8, I mean, if you look at the, kind of the fleet or whatever, and,
To keep us on
I
a
believe 8 is.
consistent rotation, we need 10 a year average.
Is one of these, carbon or not?
Not in the, now, my thought was they could have another one. Clarkson will do a deal where they pay back over 4 years, but that's basically the county financing the car for 4 years. So I don't know, I mean, that could be,
And we bought them doing last year.
Do that new,
This year.
we did one this year, yes, ma'am.
do the new guy who coming in, that we approved on that, school resource
It'll be
office,
added that rotation.
he comes with a car too, right?
No, the car don't come, it'll come out of that.
So we have to get him a car, and add additional car for him coming in.
Yes, sir.
How many of these are reality?
Which one?
How many,
No, which one are you asking?
I say, how many of them are gonna be reality?
This is all we
All
proposed.
of them could be.
Yes, sir.
And the red represents what now?
What was added since May 1st meeting.
Since the last time we came in.
You remember, we kind of heard, some of the feedback we heard was we really need to look hard at the vehicles, we need to look hard at the ambulance. So we tried to, we increased our appropriation from fund balance for capital, for some of these capital type items.
I think though, if we're gonna continue to cover Parkland, which I think we should, I think we would be sort of foolish if we didn't take advantage, even if we did have to finance it. If they pay us back $40,000, $40,000 is $40,000 when we're gonna cover it anyway. So I
Now,
think,
what's the,
That pays 21,000 a year for a vehicle.
they pay 21,000 a year for a vehicle?
That's right. That's their, they pay rent on a county vehicle, so there's almost enough there for a vehicle. each
Every year? I didn't understand that.
I thought it was, did we charge them annually? I thought we charged them just one time a year.
Once a year, we charge them that,
But it's only a set amount for like $4,300.
the 43?
Yeah, so you pay
It's
for
over
it.
4 years. I
It's
got-
over
Yeah, it's
4
over 4
years.
years.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's over 4 years.
yeah, but you just
But if
used
we
the
had-
number 40,000 just
We-
a second ago about vehicle for them.
I didn't,
They
I'm not
only
sure about
requested
the
$23,000 for a vehicle for them.
That
I
man,
was saying the 4 years, that they'll pay for it over 4 years,
Right.
on,
If we did.
if we did it,
on this thing right here
yeah.
with
So it's not a
change,
bad, I mean, it's not a
No,
bad deal.
I would say
so-
do it. I mean, if you're gonna furnish them a vehicle and a person over there anyway,
Yeah.
be foolish not to take the money.
We did just buy one,
Finance.
one of the reasons I didn't include it this year is because we just bought one, for this upcoming year, we just bought one this year. So I figured they could have another, whatever, one more year, but that's fine, we can do whatever.
and the question, on the
Yes, sir.
change of lot for the building, I'm looking 3,500. What type of, is this gonna be something that's gonna be, we gonna have a key control on those lots, or what kind of lots we talking about putting on buildings? Are we gonna have something that we don't have to worry about changing them in the next
That's
time? or-
Bradley's.
My understanding is a master lot, but Bradley can speak.
What kind of lot you talking about putting on there?
Every door in that prison, there's probably 60 or 70 doors, is built to the jail standard key. So we just can't go out and get a key made, we can't change the locks, because they're not normal locks that go in these doors, and we can't secure any of the buildings out there. I have a key ring about this big, that's got one key for every door,
Okay.
and it's not feasible for us to go fumble through that key ring every time we need to. So we got a lot of equipment that's not really being locked up.
That sounds like.
Man, what kind of key control we gonna have on it? You got a key control, or how you
No,
gonna
this is
control?
just changing the locks out so we can have keys just like you have at your house.
Still should have key control.
We can put some kind of key control in place, where we don't have to worry about changing these things again, or
They
what?
have to.
You'll track.
Somebody.
How you gonna
Oh,
keep
yeah,
up
we're
with
gonna
the
keep
keys?
up with the keys. I thought you were talking about the card system and all that.
No, I was trying to figure out how you gonna keep up with the keys, and it,
Yeah,
you got that many. So you have a key control, who
Yes,
else
sir.
gets a key? Okay.
But in the event we need more keys or need to change the locks, it'll cost us $10 and not $200.
But everyone can't request a key. to
That's
get it.
right.
Okay, that's what I'm saying, who's gonna have a key and go ahead and come back?
Right now, we don't have keys,
Okay, we got that many
which is
though.
fair game.
Greg, I would think there would be enough of county cars to scrap out to buy 2 more cars. We need.
We are having a sale.
We need to get rid of some of that stuff we got.
Some of them old cars.
Yeah, we need to clean up over there.
It's a bunch of them over there, that's what I'm
Auction
looking
though,
at.
right?
That's
Yes.
what I'm trying to see how
And
much
then
I'm
that's the one you're saying you'll have enough to, that'd be good, that makes
I mean, we
sense.
probably would.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
A lot of times we don't have enough to have one every year, so if we had one, say,
It was,
last spring,
Mhm.
spring of, when was the last time we had one? Last
it
spring?
was 3 years, 2 years ago.
That hadn't been,
16?
It was
Well,
since,
it was before the storm, wasn't
yeah, it was back, it's been about 3 years ago.
I don't know, I thought we'd had one since then. But anyway, whenever there's enough inventory for kids that think they have enough to have a good, generate buzz and have people there,
About 3 or more.
then that's when they
How
have.
much you get for a car?
800 to
1,000, 1,200, something like that.
We usually put, what is it, $300 minimum on them?
yeah, 350 or
That's
something.
good.
That was the reason I was asking about the cars, I see so many of them sitting over there. What in the world, I'm trying to figure out, how many cars do we need, and you got 10 of them sitting over there in the yard all the time?
There's a bunch of us got 200,000+, or if they needed in wait for repair. I know we have one that's got exhaust leak. So
And they'll use things when they, if they need to get a part off of one or whatever for another one. I'll give you an example of how they're trying to be mindful of spending resources wisely. I'll give you an example of something that Kip and Joe Lacewell just came up with last week. You remember we had a request for a work truck with the toolbox beds that kind of run parallel with the bed of the truck. And I think it was like $40,000. Well, Joe had worked on an ambulance, and that ambulance is no longer in service because they replaced them.
It was
Joe-
remounted, so we kept the chassis.
It was, that's right. He said, you know what, we could put a bed on this one and make this a work truck, because it was a truck, like he said, the truck engine and chassis and all that type thing. So instead of $40,000, for $6,000 or $7,000, they're gonna get a nice bed and toolbox and all for that truck. So that doesn't need to be funded. So I appreciate them, and that was Joe's idea, so I appreciate them thinking that way.
Greg, I hope you'll have that sale before the budget closes out, so maybe we can get some of the cars we really can buy.
Yeah, I think he has it,
There's a bunch of cars, there's a bunch of them over there, I know that.
When he has that sale, I've been to that sale before. He could prep them cars up a little bit. They'll bring cars through there covered with pine straw. Good
Yeah.
wash it off.
yeah.
Make it look
They will
better.
bring a few dollars more.
I'll talk to him about getting it.
Right, clean them up, so you get it. Right.
This is really just kind of show a breakdown of how the funding looks for the human services agencies. For DSS, social services, you can see intergovernmental revenue generates approximately 4.8 million. The county contribution is around 2.5, and it's really amazing how consistent that 2.5, or in that ballpark, how consistent that is, that amount has been maintained over a number of years, for a total of 7.3. Public health, this is the one that shifted more of the burden toward the county over time. Intergovernmental is $1,255,000, fees and other revenue generates approximately $374,000. The county is $1,262,000, and then fund balance, as we discussed earlier, is $105,000, for a total of just under $3 million. Mental health, $4,000 is the ABC bottle tax revenue, and then the county appropriation is $48,000. And this, again, it's been that amount, I know, since 2002, and before that it was like $52,000. So it's dropped over. It's lower now than it was 20 years ago, and they've never asked for an increase. And then division on agent, intergovernmental revenue generates approximately $704,000, and the county contribution is $419,000. Blaine County Schools, I know we haven't had an opportunity to discuss the request that you all received last Monday. And current expense in our budget at this point, in the proposed budget, is $6,825,662. This does not include the one-time, that $251,000 that was appropriated this year as one-time money. You remember that was the energy, project, annual appropriation that they had that ended. It does include a 2% increase, which is approximately $138,000. It does include an increase for sales tax. The total of that is $1,615,620. Just to remind you how that's broken down, $900 is reserved for debt service. $104,592 is reserved for the qualified school construction bond payment. And this is the we put the years in here, just to remind you that the debt service on the 2 high schools, this is the 19th, this upcoming year will be the 19th of 20 years, so it's almost paid off. The QSCAD payments is 8 of 15, so that has 7 more years after this next year. The laptop project, this is the 3rd of 3 years, and then that leaves $443,000 for unidentified capital items, and that is a $107,000. That's a large increase, and it's because the sales tax revenue it has increased over the years because it's the state largely generated by statewide sales, and we've increased our budget.
So all
They'll
that
still come back to the board for, as far as those $443,000, they'll still come back to the board with the breakdown of how they plan to spend that for your.
So that's the current amount that we giving them right now is $6,825,000. Is that what we're saying?
That's slightly less. We're giving them $113,000 more than that right now. Right now, it's just over 6.9. But that includes that one-time 251.
So they're asking for,
They're asking for 7.9. They're asking for, what, 800 or 900, close to $1 million.
$1 million more, okay.
Yes, sir.
And that chart's in the back of your handout in the separate paperclip.
I don't know, I thought they were supposed to consolidate, and they're just saying that without a new building, they can't do it, but you can. And, you know, my point again was, well, we asked for money for Booker T when the kids were there, we didn't get it, now we spend all this money, and no students were there. So I
Oh, it's nice over there. They've redone the floors, they've redone everything.
But when the kids were there, they
I'm
wouldn't.
just telling you.
I can't, I just have concerns with that, I'm just.
Well,
Okay.
I don't know if any feedback you have on, I don't know,
What
but
exactly
we
is
haven't
like
had a
in place
discussion
over there right now, that building?
at Booker T.
Yeah. What exactly is that?
My understanding is staff development, training,
Yeah.
and type purposes.
That's if you go with that, that's what they're doing over there. They got staff, guys coming from, like, and they have the accepting children training session is required. They go there and they do it there, and they used to do it down at the ag building, now they do it at that building. And a lot of things they used to do at the ag, they're doing it over at Booker T. And when they have work days, that's where they at, working over there, and then they're doing stuff over there. And some of them over there all the time. That's what I couldn't figure out. Might well put central office over there.
Well, they moved half of the party staff. They
They have
moved
staff
little-
over there and everything is over there, so it's actually operating every day. It's staff and everybody over there. It's not just something that's sitting over there empty now.
So we did not, well, the school board did not lose a school then. So you're still doing all the expenses, I just don't agree with that.
No, there has not been a decrease in the actual number of facilities that are being maintained.
I'm saying, everything's the same.
One point I wanted to make is, I know this, you know, they kind of have their money in buckets, and a lot of times they can't transfer from one bucket to the other for just any purpose. If you'll think about the fact they're losing that 251 one-time money, however, with a 2% increase, that gives just over half of that 251 back.
Right.
And then with the increase in the capital, the difference, when you add this and this, you're only about 5,000 off from where they are this year in terms of total funding. However, I understand that their capital money can't necessarily be used for current expense purposes, so I don't want to lead you to believe it could. But in terms of total funding, it's not far off this year's budget. This is the point I wanted to make with regard to the Article 44 sales tax expansion. One thing that's hard to believe is that just became effective in June. We received 1 month in the 2016 fiscal year, 1 month of revenue. And that wasn't even 3 years ago. This is only May of 2019. So I want to let you know that the ability that we had to provide I'd say relatively generous increases to the school system and to the community college was because of this additional revenue that was coming to the county. And it was earmarked by this board for education. So that revenue is now not growing like it was. And so it's not new to us anymore because it's all appropriated. And that presents a greater challenge in terms of being able to continue to provide 3 and 4% increases to the school system.
Is that 641, is that already allocating that 6 million?
The 641 is included in the 6 million, yes, sir.
And that's 6.9?
Yes. It is.
I think it's important when you start hearing this in the future about wanting new schools or new buildings. And if we pass the 3-to-1 match date, and that's why I'm mentioning this to you, because that was a big thing we talked about last year, if y'all recall, that there was 3-to-1 match, providing that we qualified, that we worked significantly hard last year. I actually met with the governor and discussed it. Mr. Martin and I, and the gentleman that's in charge of construction for the state of North Carolina, and our head building inspector, Mr. Chadwick, we had a conference call. And I mean, we worked hard on this. A lot of the wording was already in place, but nobody had done the research to actually see what we actually could do. And I think I was somewhat surprised. But we worked about, Greg, I'd say 9 or 10 months and talked and met with congressmen and senators and just all kind of conversation. My point being, instead of a $30 million building that's normally required by the state for a building that will hold 700 students, we can build MROs at $4.5 or $5 million. So, providing you don't have to have a gym or a cafeteria, then you would have to make other provisions. But my whole point is, I would hate to see that they let that deadline go with a 3-to-1 match if they're gonna ever come up with a plan of what they really wanna do, and in those areas that we have the cafeterias and the gyms, that we could build affordable. You went from maybe